Welcome to program-wide Positive Behavior Supports webinar called Saving Your Sanity Using Positive Behavior Supports. Our program, which is based out of the University of South Florida, provides training and technical assistance to teachers and programs in Hillsborough County to implement the pyramid model framework to promote positive social, emotional, and behavioral outcomes for our youngest children. The pyramid model does focus on promotion, prevention, and intervention to successfully support young children, but this webinar today will largely focus on prevention strategies for families to use at home. And we're going to discuss some practical strategies to help anticipate and prevent some of those challenging behaviors we might be seeing children engaging in during these uncertain times. All of the resources that we discuss will be housed in the live binder where the recording of this webinar is also housed. We always like to make sure that we thank our funders, the Children's Board of Hillsborough County, who does fund the program-wide Positive Behavior Support Project out of USF.
The first thing we want to share is thinking about how to stay calm during these difficult times, because we know they are difficult and all of our emotions are running high. Ours are running high, the children's are as well. And undoubtedly, we're going to have some times where our children are maybe pushing our buttons a little bit, and we need to be prepared for that, as prepared as we can. One of the things that will be a resource in our live binder is this infographic here. It talks about just ways that you can calm yourself. There's some examples you can see, but you may have your own way of calming yourself when a situation arises that is challenging with your child. And then you want to reflect on how your child may be feeling, how you may be feeling. And then eventually when you're ready and your child is ready, just reconnecting with your child and seeing if you can help him or her through a difficult activity or situation that they may be facing. The important part is here too is to continue to take care of yourself so that you can be ready to take care of your child. So we're going to go through some tips for prevention, and these tips are really mirror the pyramid model, which we use in the classroom. We use the pyramid model practices. So these are very similar things that some of your children might be familiar with, or the teachers that your children are working with. Nurturing relationships, predictable routines, consistent expectations, planning for transitions, and offering choice. We're going to touch on each of those prevention strategies during this time together. So first and foremost, we want to make sure we're having those connections with our children. It goes to back to that nurturing relationships piece. We want to make sure we have time daily to connect with them, and it can be simple. It can be singing songs or reading a favorite book, or even just a hug can really be a powerful way to connect with your child. Another thing that is important right now is to check in with your child and how they're feeling and how you're feeling, and really validating how they're feeling. If they are telling you, I'm scared, ask them, well, why are you scared? And talk to them about ways that they might be able to handle those feelings. And it's okay to be scared, and maybe mommy and daddy are scared too, and talking about that, or sad, missing their friends at school because they're not in school right now, just like the grown-up that's with them might miss their work family. Also consider some other ways you can connect with family members you might not be able to see in person right now, or even teachers if they're available. You could possibly do a Zoom meeting with them, or maybe FaceTime, or even just an email just to check in with them. Those are going to be ways that your child will feel really loved and safe. This is an example of something we will have in our resource folder. It is a feelings chart, and it's a great visual to offer your child on talking about their feelings and being able to identify how they're feeling. And again, I encourage you as a parent, grandparent, whoever may be caring for the child at this time, to really demonstrate how you're feeling as well and talk through those feelings. These are some resources that are available. If you haven't heard, Audible is providing free books for kids right now, free listening for kids right now, and there's lots of different stories available. Vroom is a great app for families. It can be customized to your child, and it just gives you tips of things you can do within your daily routine. Things like at bath time, what you can do to talk to your child and connect with your child. Again, back to connecting with your child and making sure you're there with them and present as you can be. Also, Hillsborough County Library System has a variety of resources available online because they are not open right now, but they have tumble books that are accessible, and it's basically an animated book that you can look at with your child on the computer. But they also have some stories that are read by librarians there as well. So there's a lot of great stuff on there. So check out the resources that are available right now and free to you. Again, thinking about the nurturing relationships we want to continue with our children, it's important to have a space where your child can go when they're feeling overwhelmed, feeling overexcited, maybe feeling sad. It really doesn't matter what feeling they're having, just somewhere where they can go to feel safe. It's not a bad idea for you to have somewhere to go, even if it's a common space that you all share, or it might be a separate space, but you can put things in there that are calming and cozy for you and your child. Also, during the time where you might want to be able to use this space, you can show your child some breathing techniques, just how you do them and how they help you to feel calm. There's also some websites and apps that we're going to share a little bit later that are going to really specifically target mindful practices like meditation. You can do something as simple as making a calming jar. I like this idea because these are things that most of us have, or if we don't have them, they're easy to get. At the grocery store, we know that those are still essential places we can go, but an empty water bottle, glitter glue, and water is really all you need to make this calming jar. At the end, it says to super glue or hot glue. If you don't have that ability, you can just maybe wind some packing tape around, something to secure it so that it can't be opened. But that's a really fun, easy thing to do with your child. And then you could also put that calming jar or calming bottle in the space that you might create for your child to go and calm their body. Some free apps that I just want to point out. Breathe, Think, Do, Sesame is a great one. It actually demonstrates some belly breathing, and also the cute characters of Sesame Street are on there, so it's very appealing to young children. Breathing Bubbles is another app that's free, and it just talks about putting your worries into a bubble and watching the bubble go away and pop. Stop, Breathe, and Think Kids has some nice visual mindful practices that take your children through like a little story or a way to help them breathe deeper and kind of let go of their thoughts. So those are just some free apps that you might want to check out all the time, but especially during this really challenging time that we're facing. These are some examples of classroom cozy spots that your child might see something like this in their classroom, where again, they can go in their classroom when they're having a time of just feeling overwhelmed or overexcited or sad or angry, whatever the emotion may be. They can go and just kind of chill out in this little spot and be comforted by some things that they see, things that they can touch, and maybe even breathing on a pinwheel or shaking that calming jar like we showed in the last picture that you can create at home. So these are just some ways that the classrooms create cozy spots. This is an example of a cozy spot at home and how simple it can be. In the first picture, you see a picture of a rocking chair kind of in the corner area, and it looks like it could be easily transformed into a cozy spot. And in the second picture, you see some pillows, stuffed animals, even a blanket. It can be that simple, some place that your child and you can escape to when you're feeling overwhelmed. So another thing we want to consider, back to those tips we were looking at the beginning, just those prevention techniques, we want to provide as much predictability as possible for our children in these times, knowing that it's okay if it doesn't go perfectly, but if we have a plan in place and we tell them that plan and maybe even show them that plan, it will be more likely that the plan is followed. So setting up some expectations at home by using positive language is really recommended for young children, telling them what you want them to do. Put away your toys, as opposed to don't leave a mess. So put away your toys tells them what you want them to do. Talk to your child about how his or her day may look, and you may even have a very simple schedule that we're going to show you in a few minutes of what visually their day might look like. But we want to keep it simple, and we want to make sure that we keep that structure in place, like the mealtime and the bedtime. And even if you have a nap time routine, we want to make sure we try to stick to that as much as we can. Again, we know it's not a perfect situation, and there will be times when it doesn't work out perfectly. Also, just thinking with young children how at school they have blocks of time during the day where they get to be very active, but then they switch to another activity. That's something you might want to consider at home as well, just keeping blocks of times for certain activities like art, maybe even a reading time or a quiet time. Be sure to get outside and help your child be active. And if you stay active too and get outside, it really changes your mindset as well. Setting aside some quiet time is really important, and getting your child to be able to practice that is very, very restorative actually during the day. And just to continue those daily rituals that you love as a family is really crucial right now. Just those familiar routines that your child has with you. That might look different for all families, but singing a lullaby, or if you all eat together in one spot, eating together, just keep those rituals going so things are as predictable as possible for your child. Here's an example of a schedule. You can see in the picture with a little boy, they're actual clip art pictures, and it's posted in like a pocket chart. That's really nice and creative. Here's another example on the right side of, again, using some clip art with some actual check boxes. These are just examples. It doesn't have to be fancy like this. You can really draw your own pictures. I think you could even use sticky notes and do this same kind of idea, and they could peel off the sticky note when something is done or turn it over. You can come up with your own creative way, but this is just showing you an example of how you can make it a little more visual for your child, because we know young children really need those visual supports. Here's some examples of expectations at home. In the sites that we're working with, they have expectations within the school site. So we encourage you to have some expectations at home as well. During this time, be helpful and be respectful would be two great expectations that you might have at your house. And you can see what are some examples of what be helpful looks like and what respectful looks like. So cleaning up your toys, This one at the bottom, play quietly when mom or dad are working, are definitely ways to be helpful right now. Being respectful, using your listening ears. That's a very common phrase in the classroom, so that might work nicely to use at home as well. So just keeping in mind that you can have expectations at home as well as they do at school. Using a timer for different activities from going from one activity to another is what we call transitions. Using a timer is really, really helpful to help your child understand when an activity is ending. So if they are having a really, really fun time playing with their train and it's almost time for dinner and we don't give them that warning, it might lead to some challenging behavior. But if we can just tell them 5 more minutes to play and then it's dinner time and set the timer, they'll be much more likely to follow the direction we have. Timers, we have in this example a sand timer, but there's so many timers available right now. I know a lot of people have phones that they use with that have timers on them. That's fine, but you could also just use a kitchen timer. There's also some great visual timers that we're going to show in the next couple of slides that you can access as well. Here we go. These are some examples of visual timers that are available on phones. And these are great because, again, they provide that visual. They show the child how time is counting down, because children don't have that concept of time. They don't understand that yet at such a young age. So anything we can do to help them understand that something that they might enjoy that's happening is coming to an end soon, it'll make for a much easier transition. Another great strategy that we want you to consider is just using the phrase first, then. And it's very simple. It's a statement that gives a simple instruction and it tells your child what they need to do first in order to get something they want to do. So we know that cleaning up might not be as exciting as going outside, but if we remind them that first we clean up, then we go outside, they're going to be more likely to follow that direction. You can see in the first picture, again, it's using some clip art, which I'm sure you can access similar pictures like this on your computer, but you could also just hand draw them like you can see in this next example. We just simply drew a picture of outside and you can see it's very, very basic using stick figures and then snacks. So first outside, then snack. And it's, again, if you have a visual, great, but even just using that verbal direction first and tell them what you want them to do first, and then that will help children follow directions a lot easier. So another one of our tips we wanted to review was just to be able to offer choices when you can. We know that choices are helpful for us as adults, and they're also really helpful for children. That helps them feel empowered, and they will be much more likely to follow a direction or something that they have to do that's not maybe a preferred activity for them. So you can embed choices throughout the day and some of these routines like mealtime, getting dressed, but you can also embed choice in the order of activities. Again, thinking right now about how we're all home up for a lot of time, for a long time every day, all day, and how can we help them have choice in the order of the activities they can do, or even the sequence of steps for an activity. And I have an example of the order of activities coming up here in a minute. So these are just some ways that you can offer choices as simple as clothing. Do you want to wear blue shorts or gray shorts today? Again, thinking of giving them a sense of empowerment and confidence as they work through their day. Thinking of going outside and doing something active. Would you like to blow bubbles or write with sidewalk chalk? again, just giving them some choice in what they get to do. The last bullet just kind of breaks down that example I was talking about and how they can structure their day if they have some choice in it. And it really doesn't matter to you. If you see at the bottom, art, tablet, reading time, outside time, is there a way that they could have some choice in the sequence of those activities? Could they do tablet first and then maybe outside time? Or do they want to start with outside time and then come in for reading time? Just allowing them some choice and the decision making for their schedule will go a long way. We have some great resources we want to share with you. Again, these are in the live binder, but our National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations created this Tucker Turtle Takes Time to Tuck and Think at Home. The children are very familiar with Tucker Turtle at school. So this is looking at Tucker Turtle at home and really thinking about the times we're in right now. And that story is also available in Spanish. And then we also had another, the Zoo School created a wonderful scripted story about why school is closed and giving children some information in a very simplified way about why school is closed and the feelings they may have about that, and that it will happen when they go back to school again. It will happen. It's going to come, but there's going to be some time in between where they're going to be at home. Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to pick up while Erin had spoke about a lot of prevention strategies. We wanted to give you some actual examples of situations that you might be encountering right now while you're home with your young children, and how you can use some of those strategies and tips when addressing some of this behavior. So the first thing we just wanted to remind you of is that when little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, we really need to share our calm and not join in their chaos. Even though it's very easy to also get swept up in those big emotions, when we remember that we're the adults, and when we're calm, then we'll see that our children are calmer as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about trying to figure out why we might be seeing some problem behaviors that maybe we haven't seen before in our children, and understanding where they're coming from. But most importantly, how can we prevent these from happening? And how can we use some of those ideas that Erin shared for addressing the behavior when it happens? Because we know that it's going to happen, and this is definitely not a situation any of us have been in before, so we're bound to see some problem behaviors. The first thing you want to remember as a parent is that children communicate in lots of different ways. A lot of times they don't have those language skills yet to really let you know what's happening inside of them. So sometimes they do use words when they have them, but they might also point to a picture or pull on an adult to show them where what they're referring to, or use eye gaze. A lot of times, though, we see crying, we see biting, we see tantrums, but really, as the adult, we need to remember these are all different ways of communicating, and when we can frame it like that, it makes it a little bit easier to approach. So there's a variety of messages that all of those behaviors could be conveying. Maybe I'm trying to get to an object, or I'm trying to get a person's attention. We might be seeing a lot of escape. I'm trying to get away from doing an activity I don't want to do, or maybe there's different demands on me at home right now, and I'm trying to get away from those as well. Sometimes I'm just asking for help, and I don't have the words to ask for help in the way you would like me to. So we're going to talk about how we can address that as well. Or maybe I'm just looking for some social interaction. There could also be times where I'm on sensory overload. So I'm trying to escape some kind of thing that's happening in my environment that's just overloading me. Or I might be also requesting some sensory stimulation. So really thinking about maybe I'm asking for some interaction, or I'm asking for some different things that can help me with my senses. I think it's really important, and Erin spoke about it before, that a hug can go a long way right now. So when problem behavior might be happening and you're trying to work from home and also manage a household, and we see some of the crying and tantrums happening, our first thought could be, can a hug help right now? And I think traditionally we don't think of that the first thing when these kinds of behaviors occur, but we are also dealing with a wide range of emotions during this time among adults and children. So when we're thinking about behavior, we're thinking about the fact that it's communicating something and that there's a need that the child has that maybe they don't have the words to communicate. And we're going to sort of think of this as a thought bubble over the child's head. So when they are displaying some type of behavior that might be challenging to us, we want to think about what is it they're trying to say. So if they had the words, what would that thought bubble over their head look like? So we can figure out how we can support them. And we can also ask ourselves, are there some behaviors that we can ignore? We know that there's issues of safety that we absolutely can't ignore, but there are also some behaviors that maybe just are irritating to us as adults. But are we able to ignore them? Are we able to not have to address every single type of behavior as it occurs? So we're going to think about some of these scenarios, and we're going to think about that bubble. So maybe you've come across this in the time that you have been spending at home. Maybe mom's on the phone and that's when child starts to scream, or dad's making dinner and that's when child decides to start running around the house. Or maybe it's the sister's time to play with the iPad and now the brother is kicking the sister, where that hadn't happened before. So when we think of those behaviors and we think of it as a thought bubble, we can think of them really trying to say to us, I want to get something, or I want to get to someone. Or it could be the opposite, right? Maybe mom instructs their child to go to bed, and that's when the child decides to run into the living room. Or the dad says, we're going to sit down now and we're going to do some schoolwork, and that's when the child starts playing with the pencil like it's a drumstick and doing everything but writing with it. Or mom says, hey, it's time to get out of the tub, and that's when the child refuses to leave. So the thought bubble there might be that they're trying to get away from someone or from doing something that they don't want to do. And during this time, we might also see excessive crying from our children that we hadn't seen before. Maybe there's some aggression or yelling no or running away from parents. Maybe there's some behavior that we had seen when they were younger and now they're reverting back to that behavior. Perhaps they were completing tasks independently and all of a sudden that's stopped. When we think of that thought bubble, we might be able to see the child's telling us, I need help understanding and expressing emotions. We all feel really uncertain during this time, and our children oftentimes need our support to help them to really understand what they're feeling and express what they're feeling. So where we're going to start, sometimes it's really obvious what that thought bubble is, and we can stop and think, and we come to the idea of maybe it is something that they want, or they want attention, or they're looking to escape something. And sometimes we just need a few good ideas of what to do, and that's really what this part of the session is going to talk about. So I'm going to reference some of the strategies that Erin had discussed and link them to some situations you might be finding yourself in right now. In the Live Binder, we do have the family routine guide. I highly encourage you to look at it. You can look at it digitally. It is a pretty long document, but it goes through a lot of the routines that you might have in your home and a lot of the behaviors that you might be seeing. And when we think about that whole why and what that thought bubble could be, the routine guide gives you a lot of ideas and suggestions where we're just going to skim some right now. So we're going to start talking about Angelo. And he's been playing with his favorite toy when his mom tells him it's time for dinner. So she tries to guide him to sit in his chair, and maybe she usually does that and it works, but this time he falls on the floor, he's kicking, screaming, shouts no. Mom responds by telling him to stop and then tries to actually pick him up, but he ends up kicking her and then she sends him to his room. So we might think about what is that thought bubble over Angelo's head when he's told that he's no longer able to play with his favorite toy. So that behavior could all be trying to tell his mom, I am not ready to stop playing. And that there's a lot of ways that we can try to prevent that from happening. So Erin mentioned before, when we have a transition, that's the perfect example of a transition, going from playing to a toy to dinner. And maybe dinner isn't Angelo's favorite time of day. So we can provide a warning. This is a great time for mom or whoever is getting him to transition to let him know that he only has a certain amount of time left, and to set that timer. Using the visual timers is going to be really key so he can understand how much time has gone by. Maybe there's a song that mom can sing when they are getting ready to transition and to clean up, or it could just be a sound. It could be a chime, it could be some kind of thing that the child hears and knows, okay, now it's time to stop and I'm going to go to this next activity. You could also have your child imitate you cleaning up. So you're modeling for them, instead of the example we gave where it's no and stop. As Erin mentioned, we want to tell our children what to do. So we could have them imitate us cleaning up, which might help to ease the transition of moving into dinner. And we can't forget to give lots of praise, lots of positive attention when they do clean up and they are ready for that next activity. The next example we're going to give is Joseph. So mom's been providing the schedule. She has a family with children who are a lot of different ages, but Joseph happens to be the youngest. So she's working from home and has everybody set up on the schedule, and the other siblings are able to follow the routine, but Joseph is just not able to do it. So he might for a little while, and then he starts to yell or make loud noises, and then that gets his siblings upset because he's interrupting what they're doing, and then mom has to stop and she tries to get him back into the routine, and now it's turned into a real big power struggle. So when we think of Joseph's behavior, we try to go back to that thought bubble. Really what his behavior is telling us is, I can't focus on this one activity for this long like my siblings can. So when we think of it like that, we can think about some ways to prevent it. So Erin mentioned choice, and choice is a really powerful thing to use. And there are always choices that you're okay with. So maybe it is that, as Erin mentioned, the order of activities, and Joseph gets to choose the order of the activities that he would like to do for that day. We could teach him how to use a break card. So when he feels himself, and we can help him identify that moment when he's just done with the activity, he has a way of letting his mom know that he's going to choose something else to do. And maybe he can even go to another spot, like a calming corner or cozy corner in the house, where he can escape that activity but not disrupt everybody else. So you can practice using the break card and praise him when he does it successfully. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be an index card. It could be a sticky note. It could be an object that he holds up when he says to let you know, Mom, I'm really not able to focus anymore. And it could be something where everybody's reading, and his older siblings can read for a longer period of time, and he needs a way of getting up and moving that's not disruptive to everybody else, lets mom still continue working. Maybe it's that he gives a thumbs up. Whatever works. We just need to make sure that we're teaching them what the strategy is, when to use it, and really praise them when they do it. Okay, now we're going to consider Caitlin. And Caitlin and her mom are playing. They're playing with Legos when the phone rings, and Caitlin's mom has to leave to answer the phone. As soon as she answers the phone, Caitlin starts to scream, Mommy, 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 and gets louder and louder and starts throwing Legos until her mother immediately gets off the phone, goes back in the living room, and says, you can't yell when Mommy is on the phone. So with this, our thought bubble, we can really think of it as Caitlin telling us, I want my mommy's attention right now. But she's, instead of using those words, she is choosing to show and demonstrate behaviors like yelling and throwing. So if we can prevent this from happening, especially in those instances when we are working from home and we know that there's going to be times where we need to be on the phone with other members from work, or maybe on the computer, we can try to provide reminders when possible. So we can go back to what Erin mentioned with the first then. So first I'll be on the phone, then I will continue playing Legos. And really validate her feelings. I know it's sad when mommy can't play and is on the phone. If you know that the phone call is supposed to last for a certain amount of time, then setting a timer and letting Caitlin know you'll be back when the timer is done. And to also use things, any kind of reminders, and it could be where you raise your hand and you show 4 more minutes, or if you have the timer, you can point to the timer, or maybe you do a thumbs up to say, I'm almost done. But if Caitlin's mom saw her really responding to any of these strategies, she'd want to give her lots of praise and let her know what a great job she did, waiting for her mom to come back and play. But as long as Caitlin knows her mom will be coming back, she might not demonstrate some of those behaviors. Okay, last we're going to consider Delilah. And she's usually a really happy, easygoing child, and she loves going to school and playing with her sisters, but lately she's crying a lot. And she will be playing with her sisters 1 minute, then just run away crying the next minute. And her mom and her grandma who live there really aren't sure why it starts, because they really feel like she's fine. And then all of a sudden the crying begins, and then they'll try to talk to her and comfort her in ways that worked in the past, but she just continues crying. So that crying might be a thought bubble for her saying, I'm experiencing some big emotions and I just don't know how to express them right now. So that goes back to some of the things that Erin had mentioned in the beginning. We can help children to label those emotions and use some of those feeling visuals to help them to begin to describe how it is that they're feeling, and validate that it's okay to feel that way. I see you're upset and it's okay to be sad right now. We talked about having that calm or cozy space. And there's a picture here that just shows somebody who they used their dining room table and they used some bed sheets to create a little hammock space for their child. And I know if you're anything like me, we don't have a whole lot of space in our house. So that would be something that would be ideal, because it's a way of getting away from all of the other things that are going on and getting some quiet time to use the strategies like taking a deep breath or thinking about what Tucker the turtle would do. But it provides an appropriate way for children to really demonstrate and try to handle some of those really big, powerful emotions that they're having right now. So daily routines are hard. They're really hard even in the best of times, considering that what we're dealing with right now is very unusual circumstances. So in the live binder, we have some backpack connections that give you some tips on how to have a successful morning, how to have a successful bedtime, how to try to plan for activities. Since most of the activities are happening in home or in your neighborhood, you'd want to take some of that into consideration when you look at some of the strategies that are provided. But we did want to show you this video of a woman who really took the idea of making routines and kept it really simple for her young grandchildren.
I'm posting this in hopes that it might help someone like me. I am at home with my 2 grandkids, and I will be here for quite an extended time as their mom is a nurse, and I will be providing childcare while she works some really long hours. So we've already had a couple of issues come up today, and a couple of those issues have been solved with this. This is our visual schedule of our day. And so this picture schedule lets the 4-year-old and 7-year-old know what they can expect. And that predictability creates a sense of safety. So we're going to wake up every morning, and then it is time for screen time. And I purposely made screen time for when I will be making breakfast so that they are occupied and engaged while I can get breakfast made. Then we're going to eat. And this was what was really exciting. The 7-year-old at this point saw what I was doing, and she decided to finish the pictures for the rest of the schedule. So most of this was made by her from this point on. She's going to have school online every morning, and while she's having school, her sister is going to have playtime with Gigi. And then we're going to get together. We're going to do a craft every day. Today we made colored rice. Then we're going to have lunch, and after lunch, it's going to be time to play outside in the yard. And they're going to come in, and we're going to have books, and after books, it's going to be time for nap. After nap, we're going to walk the dogs, and this is how we solved another one of the issues that came up for us. Was there were a lot of questions about coronavirus, and it became really clear pretty early that if I answered all of their questions, we were not really going to be talking about anything else. And I not only thought that was bad for their mental health, I thought it was bad for mine. So we made a commitment that we will only talk about coronavirus when we take our afternoon walk. And on that walk, she can ask any questions that she has about coronavirus. And I also have some resources I've been working on to help kids understand coronavirus and how to answer their questions in an age-appropriate way, and I'm willing to share those. And then after our walk, we're going to watch TV, we're going to eat dinner, and then we're going to play some games as a family, and then we're going to go to bed. And bedtime, as you know, can be a little hairy for a lot of families, so we broke that down into even smaller steps.
Okay, so that just shared with you all one way, really simple. They didn't use anything fancy, and she was able to address the needs of her young children and one child who was a little bit older. And then also I liked the way she talked about really making sure that they were limiting the amount of time they were spending on talking about the coronavirus and still allowing the children to ask questions and addressing those as they came up. We can't say enough or stress enough that positive feedback and positive encouragement goes a really long way. These are some ideas of sentence starters that we often share with our teachers, and they can just as easily be used at home. It also helps us too, as the adults. Sometimes it's easy to focus on what's going wrong rather than what's going well. And the more we can point out those positive things that are happening, just the better overall we'll start to feel about the whole situation. And we want to encourage you to don't forget that this is the time to be gentle with yourself and with your child. Sometimes we do have these unrealistic expectations of what we're going to accomplish in a day. And if you're like me, it seems to change hour by hour of how you're feeling about the whole situation. So just keep in mind your child's abilities, know what their limits are, really try to think about how that behavior, what those thought bubbles are trying to tell you that maybe they don't necessarily have the words yet to do that. Planning ahead as much as you can. Most of the things we shared in here were prevention. So we know that maybe you've been faced with some challenging situations, and in the foreseeable future, they will keep arising. When we can start to recognize that those situations are happening, we can put some of those preventative pieces in place to stop the behavior before it ever occurs. So planning as much as you can is really one of the keys for success. And all we can do is hope for the best, but we can also just have a backup plan. And remember that, maybe we have the best intention, and like the schedule that was just shared in that video, she might have intended for all of those things to go that way for that day. And in reality, book time needed to last a couple hours. Maybe screen time needed to last a little bit longer. It's okay. We need to just hope for the best, have a backup plan, and just have some realistic expectations for ourselves. Within the live binder, we just included 2 additional resources about how to talk to children about the coronavirus, and all different ways that we can think about teaching our family that isn't in that real traditional sense, because everything we are doing at home is teaching them, especially when we spend time talking about emotions and demonstrating and practicing and modeling different ways to handle some of these real big emotions we're all having right now. We encourage you to go to the Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. If you go to challengingbehavior.org, you'll see on their front page that there is a whole section that you can click on that's dedicated for resources for talking about the coronavirus. You can also go to our webpage, and if you click on links, you'll see that there's 3 different live binders. One is specifically for family resources, so we will have this presentation along with the resources we shared housed in there, but there's also a lot of other materials that you might find helpful just in thinking about the social emotional development of your child in general. If you follow us on Facebook, we are trying every day to post something where we are seeing what our teachers are doing to try to stay connected with our children and families, what we see families doing to be real supportive of children while they're at home. And we also have our YouTube channel, which has lots of great videos on it as well. So we want to thank you very much, and we will be continuing to post, so be sure to look out for it.